Hi there. I've been playing around with a new version of Leverage and have been working on upgrading an old application to use the new stuff. And in part of doing that, I am kind of rethinking a little bit how it's structured. And I have this entry server file here that I'm going to create a brand new HTTP and WebSocket enabled server, and I wanted to show off how easy that can be. So first things first, I have this main function here that's going to run when the application starts. And I'm just going to go ahead and pull in the one important function here from Leverage, which is add, which allows us to add units to Leverage. And so we can go ahead and add HTTP and WebSocket. You'll notice that was really painless. Type definitions make this so much easier to get going and pull in plugins without much work. So already we have a full HTTP and WebSocket enabled server. I'm going to go ahead and add an event here to say, tell the HTTP server to start listening. You'll notice that there's a bunch of type completion here for all of the plugins that you've added, which is a super cool feature for Leverage. So here, I'm going to say HTTP listen, and I'm going to go ahead and say the port is 8080 on my local machine. There's also a useful configuration item here for the HTTP server that I'd like to add. I'm going to configure it, which is done asynchronously. I'm going to tell it to ignore the trailing slash. This is configuration for Fastify. If you've used Fastify before, you might be familiar with some of the options. You can provide any of them in here. Otherwise, the documentation does a great job of explaining what you're able to configure when creating the Fastify instance. All right, the HTTP server should be listening now. And I'm going to go ahead and also attach WebSocket server to it. WebSocket plugin under the hood uses Socket.io, so this may be something you're familiar with. You can also add configuration for Socket.io in here if you want to maybe disable hosting of the client JavaScript files. Otherwise, that's enabled by default. So I'm going to go ahead and hop over here just for the sake of example and bring in a new unit. So I'm just going to say hello world.tsx. And in here, to create my unit, all I have to do is export an init function that uses config. And I'm going to go ahead and make this even easier because I know that I want this to be an HTTP component. So I could go ahead and say something like component type HTTP. But we have helpers for that because it's a pretty common task. I'm actually just going to say use HTTP here. And in here, I can go ahead and configure Fastify and my component at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and specify the path that I want this route to handle, say slash, and the method is going to be get. You'll notice the type completion helping out quite a bit. We can also go ahead and drop a handler on this that will be the handler used by Fastify under the hood. And so here we can go ahead and say something like reply.write hello world. And that's it. That's an entire HTTP server with WebSockets enabled. We can go ahead and add a WebSocket unit as well. That would just take about the same amount of time as this.